מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר. בנות אשר ירביצני ימי מנוחות ינחלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיצון מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדיפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm, and on these days when our hearts are breaking, when we are seeking comfort, we often turn to the psalmist, and so I ask you now to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember Ethel Goetz. To her children, Michael, Paula, Iris, and Ron, and also to Bob and Jerry and Debbie. To her grandchildren, Victoria, Alyssa, Jessica, Christina and Lee, Erica and John, Tyler and Brandon. And to her beautiful great-grandchildren, Brianna, Nathan, Allison, Vanessa, Brooklyn, and little Bryson. To her brother Myron, who is with us here today, and to all the members of this very large and lovely family, and to so many dear and cherished friends. We've gathered together today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Ethel. Our sages in their wisdom have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Ethel's journey began here in Cleveland. She was born in 1929, and she left this earth just a few days ago, 1 month shy of what would have been her 89th birthday. Ethel was one of 5 children born to John and Susan Pavlik. Ethel, along with her siblings, Emil, Margie, and Eleanor, all of blessed memory, and also her brother Myron. This large and loving family grew up on Cleveland's west side during some of the most challenging years in our nation's history. Now, I had a chance to chat with Myron just before our service began, and he assured me that while there were struggles that his family endured, he said that it was a very loving family. And he assured me that Ethel enjoyed a happy childhood and that she was blessed with lots of wonderful friends. After her graduation from Rhodes High School, Ethel went into the workforce, and it was around this time, we're uncertain exactly of the date, but sometime in this moment of her life, she met Jerry Goetz. He was a young Jewish man from Cleveland's east side. Ethel was a young West Side girl who was raised in the Lutheran faith. Following a courtship, Ethel and Jerry were married on September 6, 1949, and soon after their wedding, Ethel chose to convert to Judaism, and she selected for herself a Hebrew name, one of the most illustrious names of all. That is the name of Ruth, or as we would say in Hebrew, Ruth. And then as Michael and Paula and Iris and Ron entered into Ethel's world, it was then that the Goetz family portrait grew more and more complete. Her life was her children, her family. Nothing was more important to Ethel. And for her and to her 4 children, no one was more loving, more compassionate, and more supportive than their beloved mother. Ethel's children described their mom to me as a woman who always gave of herself. When we sat and spoke just yesterday, you all told me in a variety of ways, but it always went back to the same theme. And you told me in so many ways that she would go without. She would go without in order that you could have what you needed and what you wanted. The 4 of you saw a mother who was liked, rather adored, by everyone who knew her. You described a mom and a friend who was the sweetest, most loving person. And it seems that you 4 were not the only ones who believed this to be true. Your mom's friends, the extended family, her co-workers, and even in these past several years, her caretakers. Everyone who knew Ethel loved her, and they all knew that they were in the presence of a really good woman. We might say in Yiddish, a gute neshama, a good soul. This was Ethel. She had a caring and sensitive heart, and you could always count on your mom crying, not just for the happy ending movies, but even at some cartoons and commercials. She felt the pain and joy of everyone and everything around her. In your best moments, your mom was your greatest cheerleader, and she was your biggest fan. And in those moments when you personally felt that you were at your lowest, when you had hearts that were breaking or heavy, it was in those moments that your mom was there as your strongest advocate and your best protector. She was, as you all said, the glue that held your family together. Growing up, times were, financially speaking, challenging. They were tough. And your mom oftentimes worked 2 jobs to help make ends meet. But her main career was at the Cleveland Trust Bank downtown. Ethel was actually in the trust department, where she trained incoming managers, all of them men. She was so good at her job, so efficient, and she was respected by all of her coworkers. When Ethel's husband Jerry died suddenly at the age of 56, Ethel seemed to have girded herself with strength and, I would say, some degree of bravery as she set out to move forward and continue to be the glue that held everyone together. Your mom, at that point in her life, learned how to drive, and she made sure that she had time to enjoy her friends and spend more time with them. She even went with a friend, Pam, and visited Spain, a special trip that her son Michael gifted her. And she made time for her favorite hobby, actually, as her children assure me, her only hobby, her grandchildren. Ethel adored her grandchildren, and her greatest joy was spending time with them, whether it was an outing, a family gathering, or more likely, all the wonderful moments she spent babysitting her grandchildren. She just could not get enough of them. And throughout this service, if you happen to hear the sound of laughter or squeals or even maybe a cry or two, how delighted would Ethel be to know that all of her great-grandchildren are here to honor her. Her daughter-in-law, Debbie, shared with me, she said, "I've known Ethel since I was 17, and she was the best. She was like a second mother." And Debbie, you are blessed to have your parents here who are wonderful parents, but Ethel was always that other parent. You enjoyed a beautiful friendship, and so did Warren and Lil, your parents, with Ethel. And that's very, very special. And her son-in-law, Bob, shared the following with me. He said that Ethel's goodness touched my heart. We had a special bond. And Bob, she would often tell you, "You're like a son to me." And she treated your daughter just like another one of her grandchildren. She loved going to her events and watching her dance. I'm told by all of her children that the one word that was never in Ethel's vocabulary was the word no. She had a lot of trouble saying that word, if ever. Whether a family member or a friend, if you needed something, if you asked for something, she just never said no. And this is probably why she merited such wonderful friends and friendships. I have to say that the family showed great love and gratitude to everyone who touched their mother's life, but especially to a few that I need to mention today. The family is so grateful to her nurse, Diane Brown, who showed such care and compassion, and also to Lillian Klein, who is the daughter of Ethel's dear friend, Rose Klein. Lillian would always visit Ethel and bring her flowers, and this meant so much to Ethel and the family. Ethel's children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will always remember a lovely, lovely person who cared more for others than for herself. And they will remember a woman who was a wonderful homemaker and provider, and a woman who was a master in the kitchen with her cooking and her baking. They'll remember a woman who connected to the earth, to nature, in the way she created her stunning rose gardens filled with beautiful yellow and peach-colored flowers. And they'll remember a woman who, when you were in your youngest years, her children, you might have seen her as a woman who was maybe weak or even a bit subservient. But now as adults, you see it differently, and you will remember a woman who was always strong and resilient and did everything she could to do the right thing. She was quite a special lady. And so today we join with the sages of our people as we declare, Zichrona Livracha. We pray that the memory of Ethel Goetz will always be a blessing to all of you. Amen. As our tradition has taught us, words which come from our heart enter directly to the heart. And there are some family members who have words in their heart they wish to share with all of you today. First, I would like to call on her son, Ron. Iris, you're going to give him a little extra support. Okay.
I'm not very good at speeches. I don't really give speeches. Kind of shy and introverted, but for someone you love so much, you can't not do this. I want to thank everybody here for coming. You could sit down if you like, Iris. I want to thank the cantor, Kathy Zebo, for such a wonderful speech. I don't think you could have been given more of an eloquent speech. Thank you. What I learned yesterday when I sat down with my siblings is my sister Iris had said something that it never really occurred to me, but she was 100% accurate. My mother, I always looked at her as being, we came from a background where I always thought of it as we didn't have much in the way of financial abilities. My father was always out of work and we were always struggling. And her brother Myron is here with my cousin Sherry, and no matter how bad I thought we had it, they had it worse than we did. But my mother always tried to show us love, and what I remember is that I was the youngest of 4 children, and I was what you'd consider the golden child. I was the baby. I was the one that was coddled. I was the one that was spoiled. But when I look at all that, and I knew that, when I look back, my sister Iris had said something yesterday. My mother showed every one of her children, Michael, Paula, Iris, and myself, and Erica, Jessica, Christina, and all the grandchildren, Tyler, Brandon, Brianna, everybody, great-grandchildren. She showed all of us a different kind of love. It was the kind of love that each one of us needed to get us through feeling that we were special. My mother was one that didn't have the financial abilities to go to college, and in those days, most women didn't go to college. And my father was a very dominant man and didn't show my mother a lot of affection. And my mother had a tough life, and when I looked at her, I said, you know, she's not very educated, she's not very strong emotionally because she's putting up with this man, you know, being very domineering over her. But as I look back at it, I realized my mother was probably one of the strongest women I've ever met. She was the glue that kept my entire family and everybody in that family room over there together. There were many times that, you know, we got into disagreements and we didn't want to talk to one another, but no matter what happened, Ethel was there and she kept us together. She was the glue that kept everybody in that room together. And as I look back on it now, she was probably the strongest woman that I've ever met. I want to tell you a couple funny stories. I remember once when I was in high school, my brother got his first job, and he went out and he bought a Porsche. And Michael said to me, and I was in my junior year of high school, he said, "I'll give you my Porsche if you become a state champ in wrestling." That was my brother's love. He loved wrestling. So I'm thinking, I don't have a penny to my name. I could get this Porsche. I could really impress some girls in school, and I'm going to become a state champ in wrestling. My first match, I go out, And I remember I was wrestling at Brush High School, and I wrestled a kid who was very, very good wrestler, much better than me. And he's got me on my back, pinning me, and my mother runs out of the stands, and she runs down to the referee, and she's telling him to get that boy off her son. Needless to say, that was the last wrestling match she ever attended. When I was young, I'd go to the grocery store, and I was the youngest of 4 children. And I remember going shopping with my mother every Saturday, and we'd go to Stop and Shop. And, we didn't have a lot of money, but I loved going shopping with my mother because we'd go down the aisles, and no matter what I wanted, I would just throw in the cart. And my mom never once said no. What the cantor said was my mother didn't have the word no in her vocabulary. She gave us everything we wanted, said yes to us every time we asked her a favor. I had 2 boys, Tyler and Brandon, and when my wife and I were younger, we would go out virtually every single weekend, and all we had to do was just ask Ethel. We said, we need you to babysit Brandon. Not once did she ever say no. She watched him every single weekend, and when I say every single weekend, it's probably 50 weekends a year. She gave Brandon a bath. She read him a book. She took him out to dinner. She scratched his back. All she had in her was love. And when I look back at this, I know people have great, great parents. I probably had the greatest mother that anybody could ever have. I see that now. She came down with this disease, Alzheimer's. It took away her memory. It took away some of her physical abilities. But one thing it never took away was she had a smile and she had a warmth with her. And whoever saw her and whoever came across her in her life, everybody just said to me, your mother is the sweetest, gentlest person we've ever met. I wanted to read 2 things. My mother would always write cards to all of her grandkids. I just have 2 that she wrote to 2 of my kids. I have one for every year that they were born. She would write a little poem to them, and I picked out 2. It just so happened to be on their bar mitzvahs, but I'd like to read them for my mother and for my sons. Tyler, I loved you when you were a little boy, and through the years, you've brought me joy. The years passed by very fast. You're having your bar mitzvah at last. In the 7th grade this year at school, you're on the football team. That's cool. People sure like you. You know that. You're honest and friendly. That's a fact. You finally found out girls are a lot of fun. As you get older, it'll boil down to 1. So keep on trucking. Do what you're doing, 'cause you'll love what comes next. I ain't fooling. And for Brandon, these are her words to you. A special day is coming near. It's your bar mitzvah, so I hear. Take a long time to study for this day, but you have learned a lot along the way. Your brother Tyler went through it. He was happy to do it. Your mom and dad are proud of you. Your grandparents, Warren, Lil, and I are too. Today, all your friends gather together to go to your party to honor you, eat, dance, and whatever. Brandon, you are a very special boy. You volunteer and give the elderly much joy. Whenever I want to say goodbye, get a goodbye kiss, all I get is your hair, but oh, what bliss. Brandon loved her to death, but every time she went to give him a kiss, all he would do is put his head down, and that's all she got. I want to just say 2 last things. You can go through life, and I don't know if anybody could be as blessed as I was. I had a mother that loved me unconditionally and could never say the word no to me, as I've said before. But you could just see in her eyes and her smile the joy that I and every one of her family members brought to her. I used to look back and think how unfortunate we were, but looking back at it now, I realized I was blessed more than anything in the world. I'd like to leave you with one last story. It was my favorite memory. I was about 20 years old, maybe 18, 19, or 20. My mother was 30 years older than me, so I figured she's 48 or 49. And I was upstairs in my bedroom in college. I lived with my mother while I went to college. And I was playing some music, and it happened to be a song, Leslie Gore, Maybe I Know. It was a very bouncy tune. And the next thing I know, my door flies open, and my mother did a karaoke version of clicking her fingers, moving her arms, and dancing and singing to the entire song. And I remember thinking, I was embarrassed. I couldn't show her. I thought it was cute. But it was the most touching thing that I've ever seen in my life. And I would give anything to have a minute of that back. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Ethel's grandchildren to join me.
So I would like to read a poem that my sisters and I have written for my grandmother. It's called These Are a Few of Our Favorite Things. Singing and dancing and puzzles everlasting, passion and kindness with unconditional love, music and laughing with Julio blasting, dress up with beads and whatever we could get a hold of, stories and wishes with butterfly kisses, cooking and baking for endless days, egg rolls and nut horns everyone misses, weekend adventures with museums and plays. Love stories and sherbet were some of our favorites, or your favorites. Roses and peonies in every room. You always wore a necklace and bracelets, and you let us try on all of your perfume. Raspberries and lemons will always remind us of you. We are forever grateful of all of your days. You showed us life through a different view, and how to love in so many ways. With love always and forever, Jessica, Christina, and Erica.
Hi, I'm reading this today because my brother can't himself, but I wanted to share this from him. He wrote, "This week, as we said goodbye to Grandma Ethel, it hit me how incredibly lucky we all are to have this amazing person in our life. It is extremely rare to have a grandparent-grandchild relationship to be how Grandma Ethel's and mine was. She was the most loving person in the world, and everybody would agree with that statement. She would do anything for anybody, and that's just the beginning of everything that she has done for all of us. My grandma and I did everything together for years and years. She took me to my first movie in the theater, and we saw Barney. A funny story I'd like to share is when we were at the movie theater, she bought me 4 packs of candy and told me not to tell my mom and dad because they would be upset, which I think we could all vouch for. She did the same thing. Every time I would go to her house, she would make me eggy in the middle and hash browns. Who could forget Bob Evans trips? She once told me a story that the day I was born, the people at the hospital put me on a bed and my grandma thought I would fall off. She told me she would stand there for an hour. She told me she stood there for an hour and held me. I wanted to talk more, but this is very hard for me. Me too. And I'm going to leave it at that. She was an amazing mom, grandmother, and friend. I will miss her so very much, and I know that you're now in a better place. I love you.
As I said, words from the heart go directly to the heart. So thank you all for sharing those words. Before we conclude with the memorial prayer, I want to share this poem with you, written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it speaks to the woman that we honor today. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden path, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you lived. This is to have succeeded. Let us all agree today that Ethel certainly succeeded. As you're able, I invite you to rise now for El Malei Rachamim, our memorial prayer, as we ask God to accept Ethel's soul. El Malei Rachamim, shochen במרומים. עמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת רות בת אברהם ושרה, שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תחי מנוחתה. אנא ברחמים אסתירך, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותצרור בצרורך ימת נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום, המשכבה, ונאמר, Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear departed Ethel Goetz, who has gone now to her eternal home, may Ethel's soul be bound up in the bonds of life eternal, and grant that her memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. And to this we say, Amen. Friends, let me just share a couple short announcements with you. We will be processing to the Zion Memorial Park Cemetery. Following the interment, the family will receive visitors. This will be at the community room at the Villas of Taormina. This is in Macedonia. The address is 926 is it pronounced Kangemi? Kangemi, sorry. 926 Kangemi Court. Again, that's the Villas at Taormina in Macedonia. In lieu of flowers, the family has suggested that anyone wishing to make a contribution in memory of Ethel, you might consider the Alzheimer's Association. On behalf of the entire family, we thank you for your love and support on this very sad but important day.